social behaviors of these small Requiem sharks off the coast here in Vero Beach have not been studied much as far as I am aware. The only information I have on these sharks and the way they behave is only from my personal observations, and my interpretations are my own opinions based on several months of observing these sharks. So today, when I was observing these sharks and tracking their behaviors and travel patterns, I stumbled on an opportunity to see just how these small sharks would interact with people. I was observing these small sharks traveling primarily north just off the shore of the beach we frequently visit. As I was heading back south to get a general idea of just how many sharks were traveling along the shoreline, I came across a swimmer who was also swimming north. These sharks are quite small, so they represent a fairly low threat to people. Even so, I lowered my drone down over some sharks just to make the swimmer aware that they were nearby. I tried a few times, but the swimmer didn't really seem to acknowledge. At this time, there were 4 sharks nearly in a line paralleling the swimmer. I initially kept the drone parallel with the beach and behind the swimmer so that I could observe the sharks approaching the area as well as what their reactions would be. Would they continue their route as if the swimmer wasn't there? Maybe they would pause and assess the situation before taking any action. Or maybe they would just swim out wide and completely avoid the area with the swimmer. What did happen was actually surprising to me. As you can see in the video, some of these sharks are initially swimming out wide around the swimmer, but then pausing as if to assess the situation. After staying even with the swimmer for some time, they would eventually continue on their way. This shark here seems to be initially drawn towards the swimmer, but as you can see in a moment, it quickly turns away and disappears. Another shark seems to be drawn to noise or vibration from the swimmer's hands slapping on the water and makes a close approach, but then also turns away quickly. This happens over and over where the sharks start to approach, but then at some distance from the swimmer turns away. They continued the behavior of going out wide around the swimmer for several minutes, and so I started to think that this would be the general pattern of behavior for these small sharks. This pair seems to do some kind of circular swimming pattern and then ended up swimming off together. It would be interesting to learn if this is some technique they use to communicate. We will see 3 sharks take on a similar behavior later in the video. The number of sharks in the frame started increasing, and with that increase in number there seemed to be closer contact with the swimmer. It was at that time that the swimmer decided to take a rest. Without the sound and splashing from the swimming stroke, the sharks appeared to moving quite a bit closer to investigate. The swimmer then stands up, and that is when I was shocked at what I saw. First, one shark approached directly behind the swimmer and turned away within a few feet of where he stood. There were now 3 sharks behind the swimmer, and without the sound or vibration, they continued their path straight ahead. The first shark again now passed behind the swimmer, but this time much closer. The second shark was now heading directly for the swimmer as well. I was a little nervous for the swimmer, but felt pretty safe that these sharks did not pose a threat. That shark came within a couple feet of the swimmer and then quickly turned away and circled around to the front of the swimmer. It once again turned toward the swimmer directly in front of it at this point, but then turned away and continued on its path to the north. The third shark now approaches the swimmer but quickly redirects away. The sharks then continued on their original travels. It was a pretty tense moment for me observing from the drone. Notice that while the swimmer is resting and generally standing still, that the sharks act as if he is not even there and continue on their path without any avoidance techniques. After resting for a few moments, the swimmer once again started to swim, but this time to the south. To my surprise, the sharks nearby also turned around and headed south with the swimmer. As he approached more sharks, they too would turn around and swim south with him. It was really interesting behavior. Look at these two and then 3 sharks perform that circle swim like the other 2 sharks did earlier in the video. It's still not clear to me exactly what it means, but it does seem that after they are done that they all leave together almost in a single purpose. Initially they approach the swimmer head on, but once again veer off once they get a few feet away. They are just not interested in finding out what would happen in an encounter with something of the size of that swimmer. They spread out some and once again head south, and the swimmer heads for shore. The swimmer exits the water unscathed and frankly without even knowing that he was surrounded by all of these sharks today. Similar stories most likely play out along the beaches around the world each and every day, but without a drone there to capture it like we did today. Thank you for joining us on another great adventure as we observed this really interesting shark behavior. Once again, we saw that most sharks, while curious, are not interested in causing any harm to people. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends and family. It really does help out the channel. Until next time, may your connection with nature be as boundless as the open sea.